The Slut Life podcast is brought to you by Slut Life brand. Slut Life is a clothing and lifestyle brand that firmly believes in empowering the sluttier side of yourself. As a thank you to our listeners, Slut Life is offering 50% off any one item on their online store at www.slutlifebrand.com. Use code SLUTPOD50 at checkout to receive 50% off any one item. That's code SLUTPOD50, SLUTPOD50 at checkout to receive 50% off any one item at www.slutlifebrand.com.
Be loud. Be proud. Be a slut.
Hi, sluts.
Hey, sluts.
Welcome to episode 19 of the Slut Life podcast. I am Buxom Gusher.
I'm Daddy Gusher, new co-host for today. What?
Well, that's because our very sweet Cherry Vom Bomb is actually moving. This is her moving weekend. We're getting that sweetie down here in Concord.
So excited.
So she should be with us next time. But we have special guest Adam Casey with us today.
Hello, everybody.
Boo, boo, boo. Woo. So Adam is a graduate of film school, has managed a comic book store for 10 years, and is an artist taking inspiration from pop culture, wrestling, pinups, burlesque, random niche interest, and of course using erotic art to showcase everyday bodies.
We love that.
Snaps all around.
Yes.
I have questions about film school.
Okay.
What do we do?
What's film school? Well, film school is a way to make all these mistakes where it doesn't cost you your career.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I graduated in 2004, so the world's a little different now, but so much of the technology is rather affordable now. So if you wanted to just like make a movie, yeah, you could get a pretty good camera, pretty good computer for editing, all that kind of stuff like that. The benefit of film school is a sort of safe environment to experiment, try new techniques, meet people, learn about collaboration, because that's ultimately the biggest thing you take from, I think, film school and most art schools that involve, creation in a collaborative sense, because, you could pick up a book, learn all about screenwriting. You could learn all about lighting through YouTube videos and other books, stuff like that. But the actual collaborative element is unique to that environment there, and so that's the gist of it there. My specialty was editing, so problem solving in a lot of ways. Also did a lot of producing there, which is also problem solving, sometimes problem starting. But
I mean, hey, look, if you're producing something and you're not causing a little bit of havoc, then what are you really doing?
If anything, it's just injecting the real world into a creative vision. Like, oh no, we can't actually do that. But I did a lot of photography while I was there. Of course, the first 2 years you do just a lot of like still photography, just lighting, exposure, composition, that kind of thing. But even after I was in the editing discipline, I would also do behind the scenes set photography, everybody working, that kind of thing. And that's where I think I really, hit my stride at the time. And love that sort of documentary style. After graduation, would do a lot of like concerts, some modeling stuff, but mainly concerts, and sort of capturing life as it is. Shooting with natural light. No flashes. A 50 millimeter lens, for anyone who knows what that is, basically kind of approximates the human field of view. So it was just a interesting take on what is normally very bright, very crisp photography. Mine was a little more raw, a little more blurry. So capturing the feeling of being at a concert. Yeah. And that's just something that sort of is kept with me, the sort of idea of, crafting an image through those sort of principles of photography as far as composition, lighting, and a single image telling a story.
Sure. When you did photography, was it film or digital?
It was film. Yep.
Okay.
Had a Pentax K1000 which was
nice.
Originally made for Kmart in the 70s, and dropped it down a flight of brick stairs, and the only thing that was wrong with it was a tiny ding in the corner. It was built to last.
Exactly. Those old film cameras, you can just beat them to hell, and they'll keep on clicking.
Yeah.
Do you still do any filming?
Not really. As digital became more of a thing, I never really found a digital camera that I liked. I liked the control over the film camera that I had, and the exposure and the film speed and all that kind of stuff. And I've played around with some, but never really had that same sort of connection that I had with that camera. It's sort of like people who have like their car that they are the only one that can talk to that car, and the car talks to them,
Yes.
Same sort of thing there. The premise of Pacific Rim, talking to the robot and the robot talking to them. So I've never really found a digital camera that really fit for me. And plus by the time, this would have been by the 2010s or so is when I probably stopped shooting but got back more into drawing. So yeah.
Were you working at the comic book store in like 2010?
Yeah. It was 2006 to 2016.
Okay.
Okay.
And it was working at the comic book store where your passion for drawing kicked up?
No, I would say, I've always drawn.
Okay.
I've drawn since I was a kid, and I got back into comics just as I was finishing college, and guy in my hall, he had several, Watchmen and Dark Knight Returns, a couple other things, and I was like, let me borrow those. Like, okay, this is cool, because the things I never really read. Now, see, when I was a kid, reading comics, there was the stuff that was out on the newsstands, whatever. But I was way interested in like things in the past, because I would get like these books about like there's like the history of Marvel and stuff like that, and it was like, oh my god, what is this story? What is that story? And so, growing up in rural, North Carolina, we had like a comic book store that was like very tiny. So it's just one of those things that as you get older, you kind of get out of comics. But got back into it, like I said, in college, and caught up on all those storylines I missed and whatnot. And then I guess around 2005 or 6, so about 2 or so years out of college, went to Heroes Con in Charlotte.
Wonderful.
And went to a panel that had, if memory serves, Ben Toll, Andy Runton, Jim Mafood, Rob Ullman, I believe, and just talking about making their own little mini comics. And it was it was really cool and really lit a fire under me to make something, and just kind of started there and started making things, and got more into drawing.
Hell yeah.
So,
did you draw your own comics?
Yeah, I've done a couple of different mini comics, and contributed to like anthologies of usually thematic kind of ones, and and then around 2016 or so, I started doing Inktober, which is a monthly challenge where you draw something every day of October. I didn't realize there was a prompt list. So I'd seen the hashtag around for like about 2 or so years before, and I was like, what is this thing? I never really paid attention to it. And then I was at a show on October 1st and drew something, and then I realized, holy crap, I've drawn something the first day of October. I've done Inktober. Again, not knowing there's prompts.
Right.
And I still, now I know there are prompts. I don't know what the prompts are. I just do the things that I think would be interesting to me. And, and so it just kind of became more of that, and became more of single images, and obviously Inktober is just about drawing, so it doesn't really matter what you do. Some folks do just small doodles. I do kind of finished pieces, and I like that challenge of 24 hours to go from nothing to a finish, rendered piece. And and so I think that's where a lot of my interest in single image storytelling in a lot of ways, of crafting an image that either evokes a feeling or tells a story, kind of came about there. And then so I've been doing Inktober ever since.
I bet you that come October 31st, though, just like when we did Kinktober, you got to a point where you're just like, whew, that was fun. But man, I need to rest a little bit.
my running list of ideas and definitely includes the Invisible Man standing in a snowstorm. So
yes,
there we go. So ink the signature.
Just white. Yes. So it's a challenge. It's called a challenge for a reason.
Oh, of course.
It's not called a cakewalk. But yeah. So I try to pace myself, and I'm always sort of thinking about different things to do, especially as I watch movies and like, oh, that's a really great character. That's really great, kind of something to recreate there, whatever. Yeah. But it definitely is a challenge. It definitely will kick your butt. So
absolutely.
So with watching movies and reading comics, have you like redrawn characters to what you would envision them as?
There's sometimes that. There's sometimes an element of making like, especially with superheroes, like slight costume changes that makes more sense, or blending of characters who've had variations throughout the years and kind of putting these couple elements together as one. There's that element of it. There's oftentimes I've done a couple like realistic cartoon character ones, so like a realistic drawing of like Wile E. Coyote with crates around him with bombs and stuff, and like realistic Luna from Sailor Moon, realistic what else have I done? Astro from the Jetsons. So been done that a couple times, and then various there's a it's kind of a meme thing. I don't know if it's still a thing or not, but there's like Fat Wonder Woman, and so I've drawn Fat Wonder Woman, and different kind of things. Especially when people ask me like at shows and stuff to draw things. Of course, obviously, putting my own twist on things there.
Yeah. So the Fat Wonder Woman actually is a nice segue into getting into the erotic arc side of things. When would you say you first like started diving into the erotic side?
That's a tough question. I would say probably so at the end of 2018. Is that right? In 2018, I focused just on figure drawing. I was doing Figure Art Friday and alternating, so male figure, female figure each week, and then alternating again plus size and straight size, athletic build, whatever you want to say. And so, so throughout the like kind of fall into winter of 2018 into 2019, there I was just doing those every week, and it was kind of interesting because people were. I was noticing the posts with larger bodies had more likes on them, and and I've never chased the algorithm. Never,
good luck doing that.
Good luck. It literally changes with the wind. It's the worst.
You can't. And so, but it was just one of those things like, okay, so it definitely seems like this is stuff that people like. Yeah. Then there's another sort of art challenge called Mermaid. Which is just drawing a mermaid every day of May, and I think there's some prompts with that too. But again, I'm just drawing whatever I want. And so, but it occurred to me, I've already been doing this figure art. Most of it is from the waist up. Just got to put a tail on them, and I'm done. So easiest challenge ever.
The sad part is when you said that, my brain went to butt plugs. What?
What? different one. Woo! Different kind. There. This is fishtails.
Yes.
Yes. So that 2019 was the first time that I did Mermaid, and did the same sort of approach as the figure art. So there's thin bodies, athletic build, average build, large bodies, all kinds of bodies, older bodies too. So and it was just people liked it, and people thought hey, this was really good. This was they appreciated the representation there. And then I just sort of let's see, that's 2019. So then we get to 2020, and at the start of the year, I'm like, all right, I'm going to get up there. I'm going to do some of these shows. It's going to be awesome. And then
kill it.
And then the world had other plans. And so there were no conventions. And so I had already had ideas for a couple things. And so coming out of working in a comic book store, I saw a lot of bad art, and not just bad in execution, but bad in representation, bad in spirit. Yes. And so not all women have long legs, tiny little bitty waists, are missing ribs, it's just horrible. And of course, I mean, there's bad depictions for men as well. So, it goes, not all men can have a 16-pack, of abs. So there's just a lot of, bad art. And granted, it's gotten better over the years. Don't get me wrong.
Absolutely.
But still, like, the sort of perfect ideal, superhero is these kind of bodies there. And which is to say, of course, yes, if you're going to be strong, you have muscles, stuff like that, but that doesn't mean that you have 0% body fat,
Right.
Preach.
So I mean, you look at these like NFL guys running up and down the field all day, and these are like 300-pound dudes, big and stocky, and could knock people into next week. So
Olympic weightlifters.
Yes. So anyways, so that had always kind of been in the back of my mind of like, this stuff's not great. And so then I was planning for 2020. I already had a line I was going to do of like sort of just drawings. I was calling it Lingerie Ladies, and different body types, bright hair colors. And so it's definitely influenced by kind of classic 50s, 60s kind of pinup men's magazine kind of look with a sort of modern style of, like color hair and that kind of thing. Yeah. And so that's where, it's like, okay, I'm just going to do this. And, then it just kind of became, there was nothing else going on. One of the first things I did during kind of lockdown, I guess this would have been April-ish, May of 2020. I have to go back and look. A series I was calling Modern Art, and it was women taking selfies. Various states of undress, maybe with a towel wrapped around them, whatever. Because, hey, that's how people were flirting, you couldn't leave the house or whatever. So that was what was going on. And so I did a couple of those, including one with a mastectomy, a scar on it. It's since been picked up by several breast cancer awareness groups. They've used that on their page and stuff like that, and thankfully given me credit for that. So it's great. So that's probably where I would say it first started, was this depiction of attractiveness of people being alluring, but being sort of average or not, not the
traditional,
Well, I would say not like Hollywoodized or glamorized, not in a commercial,
glamorized commercial,
not some perfume commercial or anything like that. It's just like, here's an average person, and and I think also too the pandemic sort of made people aware, I think, of themselves in a little bit of ways, and how their body was changing, obviously, because you're being at home, you're eating more, you're not getting as much exercise, whatever the case may be. But you're also just sort of aware of, I think, a little bit of your mortality. I mean, to be honest with you, there's certainly, I think everybody at least knows somebody or knows of somebody that, passed during 2020. If not, then you probably know a celebrity that did. And, so I think a lot of people, at least I hope they did, realize, this is their one life, this is their one body. It's beautiful, they're beautiful, and it's okay to feel beautiful, and it's okay to feel attractive, and so I sort of, I'm a straight white guy. What do I have to say? Well, I can use my, demographic checkboxes there to help further, like, hey, check it out. Art doesn't have to all be skinny, emaciated people, or, Botoxed out and, whatever. It can be just normal people. And of course, everybody, however you wish to look is obviously, valid. Yes. I'm just saying that there are more options than what the media generally gives us.
And all of those options are beautiful.
Yes.
Exactly.
So, love it. Just love it. Yeah. So where do you draw inspiration from nowadays?
Still, a lot of the, kind of men's magazines and that kind of stuff from like the 50s and 60s, classics models like like June Palmer and Bonnie Logan, Roberta Pedden. So just that kind of just classic image, which again, like much like with my interest in comics as a kid, I've just sort of always been interested in like the past and like what was going on, before I was born, and like just sort of seeing what that was like. And so a lot of those visuals, I would say up until about like the 70s, Janet Lupo, a couple other ones like that, have a sort of influence on me. But of course, there's just the, that's sort of a visual style of body, because bodies were natural in those magazines back then. There weren't, a lot of cosmetic procedures and that kind of thing. So there's that element of it, but it's really, there's so much of what comes across, I think, in my art is the everyday, or if not the everyday life, then an everyday person. Like a lot of it is people that you could expect to see at like Target. And it's not like
Boo Target,
right? Yes, well, yes, exactly. You see them at Costco. You would see them at Costco.
There we go.
But it's not like, oh, this is this person on a pedestal. Soft glow around them. In a movie or something like that. Like, no, this is just an average person. This is the person you see, on the opposite side of the street when you're walking down. And you never see them again. That kind of thing. So I like that these images often, I feel like, hopefully I'm achieving this, is that there's a realness to them that you could imagine them existing outside of that image. Like they existed before and they existed after that image, but this is just you seeing them right now. Like I've done a line called Your Creepy Ex-Ghoul Fiend, which is women wearing those classic vintage plastic Halloween masks with like thrown together costumes. So like Dracula's got like a tuxedo T-shirt, on with a Dracula mask, and you could imagine like, okay, they've got to quickly go to a Halloween party, and so like let me just throw this together, and so so I like to think that with body language and sort of the composition of the images, there is that sort of realness that you look at them and it's like, oh, that reminds me of so and so, or it reminds me of me, when you look at it. So.
I actually get that a lot with burlesque too. I get a lot of women that are around my size. They'll come up to me and go like, "I can see myself up there," and I'm like, "Good, do it."
Get out there.
Yeah,
truthfully, like the best compliment I've probably ever gotten is I sold a sticker on Etsy, and somebody replied back, "Thank you so much. It looks just like me," and they sent a picture of themselves. They were bald. And it was the sticker was a bald black woman in lingerie looking attractive. And surely there's not much out there, I would think. But yeah, so I was so happy that this person was able to, see themselves depicted as worthy of desire, and I'd like to think that's something that I also is something in my art. Like it's not, you look at a lot of my work and it's not like, it's not fetish art. It's not fetish art. It's not, oh, here's this one specific thing. It's like, oh, feet or whatever. Yeah. Again, those are all valid, but it's this isn't about sort of like exploitation as much as it is representation. Yes. It's about like, this is real life. People go throughout their day thinking, man, I can't wait to get home and kiss on my, partner, whatever, and that's real life. And, so that's where a lot of that comes from, is like trying to have all of everybody kind of see themselves. One of my favorite things is it shows people flip through my prints and they pick out something that looks like either themselves or their partner, or in the case of lesbians, each other, which is always really great. They find one that looks like each other and like, hey, this is like you, and they, so it's, that's what I like to do, is have people see themselves or someone they love in art.
Love that.
Do you draw from I don't want to say generic, that's not the right word, but like, do you just visualize what or who you're drawing, or do you actually draw from actual models, or
like do you have like any specific muses that you pull from?
So as soon as I say this, it's going to be pretty clear. When you look at when you look at them, especially the mermaids, you will see elements of burlesque. You will see elements of ballet. You will see elements of modern dance. You will see that sense of movement because I think the initial thought is, swimming, right? And swimming does require its own certain movements, but there is a grace and fluidity to a lot of dance, and that translates a little better to a mermaid than if you were just like, somebody swimming, you know? And so you will see like a lot of, during mermaid, you'll see like a mermaid that's doing sort of like a hip hop, you know, like that would be a stage move, you know, in burlesque. And you would see somebody with like a kind of arm stretched out sort of, like a ballet move or something like that. So that's where a lot of that gymnastics too is another one, especially for the mermaids. So a lot of it comes from that. A lot of it comes from just sort of always looking and always sort of like keeping an eye out for like, that's a great way that the person's resting their chin on their hand or something like that, and just sort of filing that away, and sort of just sort of always kind of looking for those kinds of things. And it's similar, I recommend for people, like, whatever you want to be good at, you need to not overly consume what it is you're doing. For example, if you want to make a horror movie, you shouldn't just be watching horror movies. You should be watching, Korean dramas. You should be watching,
watch a Wes Anderson movie.
Watch silent films from Russia, whatever. And because you're going to get all this influence, you get all this like, that's a really cool shot. I never really thought about that. And then you can use that for your medium. And so like, there's some. I mean, this is. I think this is a universal experience for a lot of men. But sometimes you'll just see like a woman just like with her hand on her, like I said, resting her hand on her chin, and you're like, that is an attractive woman, and you can't really explain why. It's just her just like waiting for food to come at a table or something, whatever. And it's just in that moment with the way the light's hitting, the way the hand's resting, the way the eyes are looking. It's just, this is an attractive person. And, there's that line in Citizen Kane where the guy, took the ferry one year and saw a woman, but back like the 1800s, obviously, or set in 1940. But anyway, a woman with a parasol. And he thought about her every day since, taking the ferry in New York. And it's like, I think there's plenty of times where people, and I'm sure it goes for men and women, of like, there's just this attractive person that you just randomly see. And it's just this moment, and it's just this, the way the light is, the way the body language is, parasol, whatever it is. And so I try to, keep an eye out for those kind of things and kind of accumulate them and work them into pieces when the time is right.
Do you recreate images from other models or sex workers or performers? Like if you're scrolling Instagram or something and you see something that you liked, you're like, man, I kind of want to draw that. Or do you just take inspiration from it?
I mean, it all depends. Sometimes obviously folks, have asked me, or sometimes like with mermaid, I've opened it up, be like, hey, anybody want to be a mermaid? Please let me know. But other times it's just like, that way that hair's moving is perfect. You know what I mean? Like it's somebody like doing a hair flip, and like that would be a perfect mermaid hair flip. And so this is the way the strands are or whatever. And so you kind of just, again, just sort of file all that stuff away. But yeah, I mean, obviously there's folks that want to be drawn, and sometimes I'll ask like, hey, is it okay if I reference this, whatever, blah blah blah. But yeah. So
you mentioned a lot of like filing away. Have you ever done any live figure drawing?
I have done some. Yes, there was. It was kind of I don't think it's still going on. I don't know. Dr. Sketchies.
Okay.
I don't know if that's still going on or not. At least I don't know if it's going on around here. I think I had to was in Greensboro, I think, when I did it. And it was like back in 2006, I guess, maybe 2007. So I don't know if that's still going on or not. But that's really the only kind of main live sort of sketching, figure drawing that I've done.
Gotcha.
Okay. Yeah. So
it's an experience.
It is.
So I'm open with this. I work at a community college, and I once stumbled upon, seeing that happen, and I thought it was a very interesting thing. And Miss Buxom has actually been a figure before for that. So
yeah, it was a wild experience. It was my first and second time ever doing it. I'm open to doing it again, but yeah, it was definitely a different experience, especially being a bigger body, because I thought I needed to be a very specific type to like stand here and pose and have people stare at me for hours. But no, it was really nice. It's nice to walk around the room afterwards and see how people have captured different moments and parts of you.
Yeah, that's exactly. And I have a friend who also she does modeling as well up in Winston there, and she is a large body person, and I think it's as somebody who spent time like I said during that Figure Art Friday thing, like it is really important. Like you learn so much by I think drawing larger bodies that you just understand. I think the skeleton and musculature.
Oh, yeah,
and
anatomy's so fascinating.
Yeah. You just the way that the body moves and the way certain arms sit and it's you once you crack that you can kind of do anything. And so like you could take a athletic build or whatever and use that pose to make it a larger person if you wanted to, but only if you know how the body would distribute fat and of course with time I think including things like like breastosis, the sagging of the breast. You think that is a real life thing. That is
natural.
That's real natural. Yeah, and that's often not depicted.
I didn't know it had a name.
It had a name. It had a scientific name. It started with a P.
I just call it heavy hangers.
Heavy hangers, baby. It starts with a P?
It's PTOSIS.
Okay.
So, but anyways, yeah. I mean, that's a real thing, and I mean, I think if you. I think that's something that you shouldn't shy away from drawing. I think that's good that it's in a life model class, because I mean, if you love your partner, you love all of them, and seeing them in the morning or whenever, and yes, they're going to have stretch marks and whatever. Like that's real life, and that in and of itself can be attractive.
Yes. So. Yeah. So how do you get your art out there to the people?
Well, posting on Instagram a lot, but I, do a lot of shows as well. A lot of, comic conventions, craft fairs, art markets, zine fairs, pop-up market kind not I put it up on Patreon. I was on Twitter for a while. I'm still have an account, but not really posting there. Tumblr, surprisingly, is still thriving, and
always surprises me too. I gotta be honest. Every time I hear somebody talk about Tumblr, I'm like, "It's 2025. Tumblr's still a thing."
I still get reblogged from a Transformers meme I made in 2016.
Wow.
So that still shows up, but that's basically what it is getting it out there that way, either through the normal social media channels or taking it to the people.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, get up on the street corner and scream, "Look at my art."
So how has posting on platforms like Instagram affected your ability to get your art out there?
Well, I'm looking for some wood around here to knock on. Okay. I haven't really run into any problems. I haven't had any, thing taken down or whatever.
That's awesome.
I don't know if that's just luck of the draw. I don't know if it's because of the AI stuff is trained on real images. I don't know. So, yeah, like I mentioned earlier, chasing the algorithm is. It's a useless effort. And so what I think has really benefited me, and probably benefited me not getting flagged, is that I just have a sort of dedicated group of people that follow me, that want to see art. And of course, I'm drawing all kinds of things. Inktober is horror and pop culture and sci-fi, wrestling, all kinds of different stuff. And so it's a you find, I think, your people there, and what I often advise people starting out in art, and really anything when I run into at these events, stuff like that, is like your favorite musician played a show at one time where the only other people there were the other musicians,
Yep.
or their girlfriends and wives and stuff, whatever.
Yep.
In the basement,
and there is your favorite comedian did an open mic night for like 3 people, so you keep doing what you're doing, and eventually you will find people that get what you're doing.
Yes.
Now, it may be 1 million people, maybe 10,000 people, maybe 100 people, but whatever it is you're doing, people will eventually find what you're doing, and but you got to keep doing it. That's the thing, so that they can find it, and so that's yes. So I mean, I think in general, like social media is kind of a losing battle. It was it was already a slog, and I think efforts by Musk and Zuckerberg are making it worse,
making it 10 times
just
worse.
Amplifying its death there, but or speeding up the death there. So yeah, it's just a matter of finding the people that get you, and once you do that, it's much more nurturing, much more rewarding than like, oh, why do I have 10,000 followers? Why don't I get 50,000 likes on this post or whatever?
It's not worth
Chasing
fighting.
the number game is tough.
It's basically, if you treat it as like a mailing list kind of thing, that's basically your best bet there. Of course, some things like break containment, and get out there. Like that mastectomy piece. I've had several Inktober pieces that just kind of get latched on and get shared by a lot of different fandoms and stuff like that. So, and that's all that's great. But I don't make things for that. I make things for me, and I make things for the people that want to see those things, or want to see this kind of art or this character or whatever. So
yeah, absolutely. You mentioned AI, and I'm really glad that you did, because fuck AI, first of all.
Fuck AI, baby.
But can we talk about how AI affects what you do?
So here's the thing, is that like it's not really affecting me in that like, oh, no one else or someone else's like computer took my job or whatever, in that regard, because I'm still I'm selling like original art, and or like people are watching me draw like at a convention or something like that.
Right.
And they're seeing the ink go to the paper, and I think there is a the tactile quality, the knowing how something is made, that element is very important to people across the board. Like people like to know, like, oh, where did this bread come from, or who makes these socks, that kind of thing, so there's that element to it. What it, I guess, does affect me is the sort of general devaluing of art.
Yes.
And that
part.
In that, like, so AI fulfills the promise of social media. Now, the promise of social media was you get to complain about everything.
Absolutely.
So
whether you're right or not.
Right. All forms of media answered a question.
Yeah.
So, like, I want to know what's going on in the world. I'd buy a newspaper. Oh, I'd like to read some in-depth pieces about certain topics. I'd buy a magazine. Well, the internet does a lot of that. So what question does it answer? The question it answers is, why wasn't I consulted? Why didn't they ask me how this movie should end? Why didn't they ask me how this guy should look on this TV show? Why didn't they ask me who should be cast in this? Or shouldn't they ask me what songs this guy should record? And so, well, now you get to do that. Now you get to make terrible art. You get to make, bad casting decisions, and wouldn't it be funny if No, it wouldn't be funny. It'd be terrible. So that's where I think a lot of AI comes in there. Now, of course, the AI, the main criticism of AI, which you can pretty much dismiss, you set aside, is that one, okay, the environmental impact. Okay, we drive cars, we use plastic. That's not going to register with people. The other complaint is, oh, well, it's theft. I mean, people download movies, music, whatever. So that kind of cat's out of the bag. However, the one criticism of AI that it cannot deflect is that people say, oh, it's just a tool. It's just a tool. There are brushes that have different bristles that make different strokes. There are pens that make different size marks. There's this great comic, Mouse Guard, very lushly illustrated. It's about little mice defending their little kingdom against owls and snakes and stuff. It's really great. He drew it with a pen from Office Depot, right? Not a fancy, not a fancy crow quill or anything fancy, just a regular old pen. Willie Nelson's guitar has a hole worn in it, right?
Yeah.
Those are tools. Tools do what the person does or wants it to do, right? You just can't look at that pen and say, draw that comic for me, or look at that guitar and say, play that song for me. So AI is not a tool. It's not a tool at all. It's used by tools, but it is not a tool.
For art at the very least, I'll say. Because here's the thing.
No, yes.
I want my AI to make like boring shit about my job easier.
Yes.
I don't want it to make like the fun shit, like my artistic endeavors, easier.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, yes, archaeologists that they know, oh, this civilization built their houses, 50 meters apart, and it faced the east, and what would this look like? What would this neighborhood look like? Okay, yes, perfect. That's great for AI. Or like processing all these, X-rays. Like, is this going to be cancer? Yes, absolutely. That's perfect because that's already what we already have is predictive. Like your iPhone has predicted what you're going to type forever,
exactly.
And Microsoft Word has as well. I mean, even back days of Clippy showing up saying, "It looks like you're writing a letter," like
fucking smug ass Clippy, man, fuck that guy.
Right. We've had that technology. We've had the technology to say representative into a phone and it connects. Like we've had this technology that's like, oh, you want this? Let me give you this.
Yes.
We've had that, and that's sort of the best case scenario for AI.
Yes.
And it's just sort of that on ramped up. And we don't want it everywhere. We don't need AI on our fridge, or whatever. Like the tech bros desperately want it to be like something from like Star Trek or whatever. Yeah. That'll just do all this stuff and answer all these things, blah blah blah, and it's not, and they know it's not.
No.
And then China just released their version that was like cost them like $6 million compared to like the $500 billion that they've spent here in America, and it's better and whatever, blah blah blah. But like there's just nothing to it. And so getting back to the main point there is that there's just a lot of give me a bad Photoshop that's funny compared to any AI. Like here's Musk and Zuckerberg making out, like like that's no. Give me some crappy Photoshop that you threw together, and that's much more interesting to me than putting in some phrase in a computer there. And that's another thing too, is that like the Olympics don't give you a gold medal for being able to look up pole vaulting instructions.
Yes.
No.
Right? You get a gold medal for doing the pole vaulting.
Yes.
And so same sort of thing there is that thankfully a lot of events that I do have a strict no AI policy.
Really?
Yeah. And I mean it's to the point that I don't know how you can tell a lot of times, but at least there's that. I mean there's certain tells that are still there, but
Fingies.
Yeah, they got a little better at that.
They are getting better at that. I did notice that. They're actually drawing 5 fingers now instead of 7 or 4.
Yeah. So in general, it just sort of, to answer your main question there, it just sort of makes life harder for artists because I think so much of art is treated as a commodity. Yes. And I'll be honest with you, economy's not great. Just did a show yesterday. Attendance was down, and I have to think that tariffs and planes falling out of the sky and everything else is, hey, that's going to have a downer on people.
Yeah.
And so already you have these folks that are, struggling, and some folks use art to, pay the bills. Mm-hmm. Some folks it's just a, hobby. Some folks it's a little extra income. Mm-hmm. Some folks just like to make enough money to pay for their own supplies, so it's like one in, one out kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's already been kind of difficult, and already people kind of scoffing at, oh, this elaborate piece of art you want $50 for,
I could do that with OpenAI.
Well, but of course they're not going to have it like on a canvas or ink, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, so ultimately that's sort of what it is that across the board AI is making it harder for people, I think, to get their full value. And you see that both in the working, like office jobs, you see that in writing, you see that in anything creative.
Right.
I think that's ultimately what it is just kind of a downer.
It is a super huge downer. And the craziest thing to me is you're seeing these big commercial entities like Marvel Studios. They had like a Doctor Strange thing a while back. I don't remember if you saw that, Adam, but they had like a theatrical poster that they did up for it. And you could clearly tell that there was like AI art that was making this theatrical poster. And it's like, you could have paid like an illustrator, like you're Marvel. You got the money for it. Yeah. But instead you're going to use this tool that's not going to have any soul to it. That's my thing, is that AI has no soul to it. Right? And it's just, it's such a fucking bummer.
Yeah, I get, that's actually, that's a big point there too, is that like, people only all of us sitting here, like we could, there's a tree right across from us here, and we could all try to draw that tree, assuming that we could draw it like photorealistically. It's all going to look different because you're seeing it a little different. Maybe you want to emphasize the branches a little bit more. I want to emphasize the leaves, whatever. But we're all going to take our perspective of that tree and we're going to draw it. And none of us are going to be the same, but it would be our true perspective. Computers, algorithms, programs, they can't see. They can't. And there's no way to. And I'll be honest with you, that's not entirely surprising that people are okay with it, because there is just this sort of give me content.
Yes.
Like, I don't care necessarily who makes this. Like, because you'll scroll through and, you see like this like chibi Marvel art or whatever. And it's like, why does this have 120,000 likes on it? Like, who likes this stuff? And it's like, well, people don't really care, and
consume.
Yes. And this isn't a knock on people who like that stuff. Of course, there's people that like this stuff. I mean, otherwise it wouldn't be popular. But there is this sort of just, I remember seeing a tweet that somebody was like, I can't wait for more Dune content. And I'm like, you realize there's like 8 books, 10 books. I don't even know how many books. There's plenty of Dune, quote unquote, content. Like if you just want to shovel stuff into your eyeballs, it's out there. But like if you want stuff to enjoy, I don't know too many people who enjoy the later Dune books, but
well, I mean, hey, look, they definitely went a certain way towards the end.
But yeah, so that's I think that's a real part of our society. There has treated sort of everything as.
It's just stuff to consume. It sucks.
But it's sort of like, I don't really know what the right word is, because suddenly everybody knows like the trick of like booking a flight, right? Or like, that's how they get you at the auto shop or whatever, And so there's this whole like, we don't talk about things as if they're things anymore. It's all just content and hacks and this kind of stuff. It's not just, you can't like, I booked a trip and like, okay, cool. Or I hacked, I got my hack, I hacked the airline, like, well, you didn't really hack the airline, buddy. You went to Priceline, there's this just element of trying to, I don't know, be bigger than things, or, or I don't really, I'm not doing a good job of describing it.
No, you're good.
Like,
I get it, man. What you're trying to get is that we're all like we're built to be almost content pilled at this point, to where we're seeing everything as content.
Yes.
Regardless of, whether it's slice of life or if it is like, hey, this is meant to be for the masses' enjoyment.
Yes. And I think there's a difference there, because, you flip through like even like an old magazine or whatever, and like Sports Illustrated or something that would have, some sort of photo spread or whatever. And yes, there's a bunch of shots there. Not all of them made the cover, but they're like, this helped show this person, either because of like their character or their physical prowess, whatever the case may be. And now that's just kind of lost. And I think part of that is just our digital world of like, to sort of cycle it back to the film school stuff. Like when I had a roll of film, I could only shoot 24 shots on that roll, And so it was, okay, we got to have the blocking right. We've got to have the light right, the stuff, take a shot. And same thing with your actually, shooting movie film, reels of film. It's like,
it's expensive.
Okay, we got to move. You're going to step here. You're going to find your light. Camera pans over here. All right, let's do a couple rehearsals and then let's shoot it. And then, but then you don't really know until you get it back, like, how it turned out. And, and I think that's sort of an element that's kind of lost from our world, is this sort of intentionality of like intentionally making something, intentionally, reading, watching. Because now, I mean, movies are just like background noise now. It's the equivalent to putting on some music or whatever. And so I think that's where I think my art sort of differs in a lot of ways, is there is an intention there. And it's not just like, here's a fat person, which, I mean, not to knock that, but there's a lot of art out there now that's just like body positivity. And it's like, well, are you really body positivity if all you're drawing is a certain type of body, a certain type of fat body,
it
or
feels
whatever.
Empty when you have that. You have those accounts and those people who are like, oh, I'm all about body positivity, but it's like you're just showcasing one specific body type, and you're not really even pushing the message of like self-love, self-care, things like that. you're just pushing this very specific agenda at that point.
And that to me feels more like fetishizing.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Definitely
Absolutely.
feels sort of like exploitative. When you're again, like I'm a straight white guy. I'm kind of average built, but
it reminds me of corporate like DEI and equity type stuff. It's literally just, oh well, we're just pushing this for just to look good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's that. I think this is more of people found a way to exploit, for lack of better terms, a vulnerable demographic. It's like, hey, you don't have a lot of body positivity out there, or it's very hollow, or you have it's rare that you see larger bodies, that kind of thing. So here's nothing but that. I'm going to draw them all the same way. They're all going to look the same.
The fat's deposited in all the same areas.
That's the thing, too, is it's always an attractive distribution of fat.
Yes.
There's never, like, I don't...
Yes.
Yeah.
Now I'm picking up what you're putting down. I have seen many accounts like that.
Yes, it's not like there's you could have small boobs with a big butt, big boobs, no butt. There's big belly, big butt, small boobs. It's basically like a random character generator. That's how real bodies are. And to just do one type, usually depicted in a certain way, in certain activity, is very limiting, I think. But obviously resonates with some people. But that's not for me.
Yeah.
Well, are you open for commissions or doing collabs?
Yes. I draw at shows. Obviously, when people ask me to draw, and I get people emailing sometimes and asking for requests or So I'm open to that. Yeah.
Where can people reach you to do that?
Well, AdamCasey.com would be the easiest way, because then you can get to Instagram, Patreon, all that kind of stuff. So,
yeah.
Nice.
You got an Etsy shop or anything?
There's Etsy up there too. Yep. Yep.
I have bought from the Etsy shop.
You have, yes.
I have. All right. Well, let's wrap this up, y'all. Yeah?
Yeah.
Any closing words?
Do we want to talk about like the events you got coming up?
We can, yeah.
Or we can do that in a short.
We can do whatever. It's your show.
Right.
I'm just here.
That's fine.
Okay. Well, be loud.
Be proud.
Be a slut.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Slut Life Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a rating or review in our podcast to share the love. Don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss out on what we have next. Follow our Instagram at SlutLifePod to keep up with all the fun. And always remember, be loud, be proud, be a slut.